Andrew Wilson just has this energy about him that I feel like a lot of people on the conservative right can resonate with, and it has to do with being fed up with the liberal nonsense, the constantly perpetuated faulty ideas, and watching him on Piers Morgan is always a pleasure.
Let's just segue to another big story this week of the arrest of Andrew and Tristan Tate in the United States. Now, these two, Andrew in particular, have become a kind of talisman to millions of young men around the world, which many people think is a pretty unhealthy state of affairs. You've all been on the record about the Tates previously, and I completely accept that news events have moved on, but it has split the right in America. And I want to play a clip from Ben Shapiro talking about this.
Folks, if Republicans would like third worldists to win, these commie, Castro-standing revolutionaries who desire ardently to subdue and overthrow America, if Republicans want those people to win, then you probably should keep allowing the retard right to take over the party. Now, call me crazy. I think that when law enforcement prosecutes the guys pushing pimping hose degrees to young men via TikTok and sexually abusing underage girls, I think when those people get arrested, that's probably a good thing.
And I believe, and I think they believed, that they had some level of diplomatic protection from the United States, particularly from the Trump administration. Tate brothers have been good allies. They've been a pretty good sport to the Trump administration. And from what we've heard today, it sounds like Trump is not going to lift a finger to help them.
The Tate brothers in general, I disagree with a lot of the things that they push. I will say that they are right. I've definitely watched some Andrew Tate content where what he was talking about was, he was on point. He was correct. He's correct about a few things, but generally speaking, figures like Jordan Peterson or Charlie Kirk, those figures were the more healthy male role models in my estimation. And Andrew Tate sort of represents the sort of toxic, the more radical version of masculinity, which I agree is a backlash to the radical feminist propaganda. It's the opposite end of that pendulum.
In this hearing, but it's not looking good. Go figure. Golden age, we have all these indictments that we were promised. And of all people, it is the Tate brothers.
So, Andrew, let me start with you here. In March 2025, you said Christians should stop bitching about Tate as long as Christians allow feminism and sewing circle lunatics to punish all forms of masculine expression in Christianity. Men like Tate will reign. As long as the message is feminine only, Tate will beat you every time. What do you feel about him now?
It's still true. There's nothing that I said there that was false. As long as it's the case that masculinity is punished, you're going to see men who say that it's okay to have traditional masculine capabilities. You're going to see those people glorified no matter what. So in this case, you could say, hey, these guys are pimps. You can attack them personally. You can say that you don't like how they behave. But what's never really attacked is the messaging. And if the messaging was attacked, I think that leftists and feminists would have a much better time. But nobody really attacks the messaging. They just attack the people. And it's like throwing the Tates in jail isn't going to change the fact that having a pro-masculine message is a good idea. And it's something that the right wing needed desperately. And it's something that Christian ethicists need to focus on as well. It's okay to be a man. It's okay to be masculine.
I agree about the attacks on masculinity. And I think that's part of the reason for the rise of people like the Tates. However, they were brazenly misogynist in open sight, right? They didn't hide it. They spoke in a revolting way about women. They wanted women to stay at home, have no vote, have no job, blah, 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 blah. This was all being done in plain view. They were quite proud of it. And I was surprised how many on the conservative right, the Christian conservative right in particular, were prepared to kind of tolerate that.
There's overlap between ideology. So Christian right-wingers who are part of traditional churches, those are patriarchal churches. So you have overlap in some cases with the ideology. So of course some of them are like, hey, look, I don't agree with the pimping. I don't agree with the various things that these people do. But some of the messaging I do agree with. And the fact that men are latching on to that messaging opens the door for Christian ethicists to come in and say, hey, look, masculinity is okay. The pimping part's not okay. The prostituting women out's not okay. But the masculinity aspect of it and the patriarchal aspect of it under the true church is perfectly acceptable. That's why so many Roman Catholics, Orthodox, and high church Protestants were able to kind of latch onto that message inside the manosphere and start turning the tide towards the Christian ethics and away from the OnlyFans and pimping and prostitution, et cetera.
Jojo, you said if you're getting your facts from Andrew Tate, congratulations, you're an idiot, an asshole, and also very likely an incel, and you need to get back to your basement dwelling, raid spanking, and video gaming because the grown-ups are busy working. Now, in a way, my issue with that would be that you're targeting, I think, a lot of people who I would categorize as victims of Tate, impressionable young men who feel a bit disenfranchised, feel a bit under attack, and are gravitated to people who have a rhetoric and a style of delivering it, which is a lot of the time quite empowering. You know, get fit, get mentally strong, want to do this, want to succeed, but nothing wrong with any of that. But then they have this nefarious side to them. And just how nefarious we're going to discover when they're finally put on trial. But is it fair of you to just demonize everyone that gravitated to them in the way that you did?
I don't think it's unfair for me to demonize the Tates, but I also think that we have a conflation of what the word masculinity means, right? I mean, again, Andrew Tate was arrested in pedal pushers and a purple shirt with his chest hanging out. I mean, the whole thing has been memed a million times. But, you know, Donald Trump is certainly not the vision of masculinity that I think, people would say, oh, if I were to look the word up in a dictionary, it would be the guy who's covered in theatrical cake makeup and wears lifts in his shoes and, a girdle. But I think that it's been incredibly damaging to young men in this country that conflation of what masculinity is has meant bragging about grabbing women by the pussy, bragging about raping women, bragging about beating women. I'm the mom of a 16-year-old boy who will tell me that he sees his friends who watch this shit and think that guy's cool and that guy is what it means to be manly. I think that's a bigger referendum on what's happening in our culture as a whole. Like, again, as I said, as a mom of a 16-year-old son who went through the pandemic, I would say that the video games, that he, was isolated with his friends, that they were playing, games like, what's the one that they all play? I can't think of it, where the instantaneous gratification, so that they weren't having, conversations with people face to face, those kinds of things that are crucial to their development, they were missing. And these guys came in and filled that void. But I would say that if at any point, you're somebody who's looking at the Tates and saying, yeah, that's what it means to be a man, then you're confused to say the very least. And something else is missing in your life that you're trying to fill with this manufactured idea of what it is to be a man.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is, if you want talking about conflation, right, conflating messaging, this is a woman who said that Charlie Kirk was the king of the incels, right?
Yeah,
so
see, this
talk
is
about
what's so fun, right?
Talk
Dude,
about
such a
don't
good
know
point.
what words. Talk about what don't know what words mean, right? A guy married to former model, right, who has children is king of the incels. It's like, give me a break. That's one. She also said that he was
That's
the
exactly
head.
what happened.
Hang
Charlie
on.
Kirk went onto college
I didn't interrupt you. I didn't
All right,
interrupt you
okay,
once.
you're right. I'll
I
let
didn't
you
interrupt
finish
you
and then
once.
I'll respond.
So he also said that he's the king of Hitler Youth, right? At TV USA. They don't know what words mean. And so here she's going to pretend that suddenly she knows what the word masculinity means. Masculinity is set and enriched through virtue ethics and the idea of the virtues around the male and the idea of virtues around the feminine. That's how we even know what femininity is, what masculinity is. There's some parts of Tate's message that I agree with you are really, really poor when it comes to that. But there's other parts of his message that weren't very poor when it comes to that. So don't try to tell us what masculinity and femininity is. You don't even know what words mean. If you're going to call a guy like Charlie Kirk the king of the incels, you don't even know what words mean.
Okay.
Well, can I point out?
Was married does
Let's
not mean that
go.
Charlie
Dave, I'll
Kirk.
come to you in one
respond.
sec.
Because Charlie Kirk was married to Erica Kirk, who, by the way, may or may not have been introduced to him by Donald Trump. Because she worked for Donald Trump before she met Charlie Kirk.
What?
So what?
Yes.
So
well,
what?
Well, there's lots of speculation as to how that all came to pass. But to say that Charlie Kirk was the king of the incels is not a referendum on.
This is a perfect example of why they're so insufferable, why these liberals are so insufferable, especially liberal feminist women. It's just, they're just so insufferable. They don't know what words mean. They're so wrong in their assessments that it's just hard to listen to.
Charlie Kirk's choices in his life. Charlie Kirk went to college campuses with Turning Point and courted young men who were incels. They were voluntarily celibate. They
What?
believe.
What? What are you
Excuse me.
talking about? Just making stuff
That's
up?
No, Charlie
You're
Kirk
just
went on
making
college
stuff
campuses
up?
and he found a bunch of young guys who didn't know where they belonged, right? They didn't have a group.
That doesn't make them
couldn't get
incels,
laid.
though,
So they
Joe.
see
That doesn't
Charlie
make them
Kirk comes in there
incels.
and he fills this void. And yeah, that was part of the original draw of Charlie Kirk.
How does that make
100%.
them incels, Joe? How would that make them
Because-
incels? He has a pro-marriage,
Because they wanted
pro-family
to blame
message. Get
somebody
married.
else. They wanted to
Mm-hmm.
blame somebody else for the fact that they didn't have enough game to get a girl. So it was somebody
You're
else's
just making
fault
it
if they
up.
could
That's
find
that's
comfort,
not
but
TPUSA's
You're just-
message
yeah,
or Charlie
this
Kirk's
is
message.
so-
What
I
are you
don't know.
talking
It's
about?
I'm
always-
saying
And by
that
the
was
way, hang on.
exclusively his
let me
message. I'm
just tie
saying that
this
was
off.
part of the appeal.
Well, let me
that
bring
was
in.
part
Let me
of
bring
the-
very
in.
quickly.
Let me bring in
Here
Dave.
you have no Charlie
Hang on.
Kirk fan ever. It's always like the liberals have to say this was his appeal, but you're not a fan of his, and no fan of his has ever once said that was the appeal. But anyway, can I
Of
just
course
say,
not.
So you
on
think
the
a guy's
message of
going
the
to be
tape-
like,
well,
oh
here's-
yeah,
one
I
second.
like
Hang on,
Charlie
let
Kirk.
Dave
Can you
speak,
explain
please.
why I couldn't get laid?
Let Dave speak.
No, of course not. But also, I think you just saying it is pretty ridiculous too, and I don't think anyone actually feels that way. Anyway, I think with Andrew Tate, the thing that's kind of interesting here, and I think particularly from the perspective of, say, like me and Andrew, is that, you know, people on the left, it's like they call everything Hitler. And then when something that looks like Hitler shows up, they go, oh my God, where did it come from? And it's like, dude, it's a direct reaction to you. It is so obviously a direct reaction to you. Is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that the Tates happened to blow up after 15 years of the left lecturing the entire society about toxic masculinity and enforcing safe spaces and all of this just nonsense, the excesses of the Me Too movement? It is so
We're not sure what
obviously
men
a
and women
counter-
are, Dave.
Yes. We don't know the difference between boys and girls. This is an
We can't tell.
overcorrection to you. And then you come around and say these things to two guys like me and Andrew, who are husbands and fathers, who are promoting more traditional family. By the way, Pierce, when you said it's not the message of the Tates that women should be at home and not vote and be in the kitchen, you're getting closer to me and Andrew territory with that. Their message was like, you should put women out in front of like a webcam and sexually exploit them and this stuff that I think is just
Well, I think
horrible.
he'd say-
This
I think-
idea
yeah,
that
And
you
they
shouldn't
didn't have a
talk
pro-marriage
with your
message.
I think
wife.
Andrew Tate,
He is horrible.
Andrew Tate grew
Hilarious to me that
increasingly
these are the
misogynist
two
in terms of stay at home and stuff when he became a Muslim.
Well,
right?
Well,
So
I think maybe, but can I just make the most important point? I believe that we didn't touch on here, right? Is that all of this? So I don't like any of that pimp shit. I hate it. I believe in pushing like a family message. I think that's where you find true happiness and meaning for both men and women, and it's better for children and it's better for society. That being said, none of that matters right now. These are American citizens who are being charged with a crime, and all that matters is specifically what's going on here. And I got to say, Pierce, without knowing the details of the crime at all, I will say from my perspective as an American, I'm humbled that I don't know that much about your country. What I've been reading about you guys, I feel pretty nervous about extraditing Americans to your judicial system right now, dude. It has shown so much corruption and so much, quite frankly, political and bias over the years that I think a lot of people rightfully do go, is this really about the crime that they committed, or is this about some type of political agenda? By the way, a long philosophical conversation that Andrew would be better to break down than me is that, by the way, Andrew, from the liberal worldview, what did Tate even do that was wrong? Really?
Nothing.
I think it was.
from the
I think it was wrong.
From the progressive worldview, they endorse OnlyFans. They consider it to be empowering for women to be online prostitutes. The only time they object is if a man's involved getting a cut of the money. That's it. That's the only time
I think to be fair, look, to be fair, there are very serious charges, including sex trafficking, rape, sexual abuse,
but
child pornography.
Here's the whole groundwork is framed for there to be pimps when you glorify prostitution. And they glorify a cam girl prostitution, and then they wonder how pimps get involved
and make a ton of money. Women for them being abusive to women. I mean, this is again.
I'm blaming the men and women.
I'm blaming women. I'm blaming them both.
Yes, you are.
I blame the pimps and I blame the hoes. I blame the pimps and the hoes.
It's a buffet to you guys. You can pick and choose that some of the things that the Tate brothers have done have been potentially bad, but not all of it is bad. Is that how it works? Because when it comes to the accusations levied against them,
they're human beings.
You would think that this wouldn't. You would say this would disqualify somebody whole hog if they've been accused of the things that they have been accused of. How can you support them at all?
For what? Hang on.
Hang on.
You said I don't like everything that they do. I don't like the pimping stuff.
You realize that there's going to be some things, right? Hang on. You're doing it right now. You just picked and choose things you agree with Dave Smith on. But in his overall view, you would absolutely hate him, and my view.
Well, no,
but you pick and
war.
choose the things you agree with us on.
Yeah, the war.
But somehow
that's okay on the war.
We can agree.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't mean that I would endorse either one of you guys.
Let me just pivot to something which we may all reach consensus on. I don't know. We might do. We might not. But another attack by Candace Owens this week on Erica Kirk. Let's take a listen to some of this.
I've been on a wild pursuit of fame and fortune your entire life. You started doing pageants, I think we showed when you were like 12, okay? 6th grade, maybe? And you have not stopped wanting to be in the spotlight. Every person you have dated has had some degree of fame, and you saw Charlie as your ticket to more fame. And then you finally got it, in your view, when you walked out in a white pantsuit with sparklers behind you, and you sucked all of that in. That was it. That was the moment.
I've got to say, Andrew, I've become increasingly disturbed by the relentless onslaught against Erica Kirk by Candace Owens. I think it's disgusting. I think it's inhumane. I think whatever you think of Erica Kirk's public appearances or interviews or whatever, she was there with their 2 young children when she saw her husband assassinated, murdered, shot dead. And to target a grieving widow in such a relentless campaign without any real evidence for any of the nonsensical theories she's putting forward, I think is actually pretty evil. What do you think?
We have right now a $200,000 offer for Candace Owens to debate her theories on Charlie Kirk with yours truly. I will say publicly right now on your show, we will up it to $300,000 just to have this woman actually debate her views. But they can't. None of them can. Not her, none of her orbiters like Baron Coleman and others. They all refuse to actually debate their views. Now you might ask, why is this the case? It's because she's the pot calling the kettle black. Imagine a woman works for PragerU, works for TPUSA, works for the, Ben Shapiro, works for all of these people, and then says, hey, this other woman over here, she's a clout chaser. It's like, give me a break. Pot calling the kettle black across the board. No evidence whatsoever on the Owens side for any of their crazy conspiracies. And you find out on top of that, that many of the people who are within their orbit who push this, like the Unfuck America Tour and others, guess what? They're funded by Act Blue. Oh, go figure. They're funded by Act Blue and trying to use this as a wedge issue to try to divide TPUSA and the Republicans at large. It's being used as a wedge issue. Now, can you criticize TPUSA for a Zionist message or having had a Zionist message or 2 pro-Israel? Sure. Can you criticize Erica Kirk and her personal opinions? Absolutely. Can you do all of this? I think that that's all fine. But that's not actually what's going on. What's actually going on is that this is being used as a wedge issue for a revenge plot, and that's what they want. They want revenge against the evil TPUSA. That's what she wants. And they will do anything to get it because for the first time ever, Republicans have outreach into universities, which is where we've been wanting to be my entire lifetime. And they're doing everything they can to destroy that, both progressives and this alternative movement. And they're such cowards, they won't even debate their views.
Man, I just have so much respect for Andrew Wilson and absolutely everything he said in this video. And if you have respect for everything he said too, please consider liking and subscribing. This is a very small channel, and I'll see you on the next one. God bless.